KSAP Beats.
So let's get wired in. Let's talk about some software development or software engineering, whatever you like to call it. So I want to start off talking about, I did a poll this week on Twitter about UWP developers. You know, I was asking if developers are happy with the platform. No, I was asking developers, are they making money? Are they satisfied with the amount of money they're making on the platform developing UWP apps? And I only had like a few votes, but it was split down the middle, 50-50. Yep. Have people are satisfied, have people are not satisfied. Now, all that could be subjective. You know, you might not expect to make a whole lot of money, and some people are just really, they have, you know, a good customer base to where users are downloading their apps. So, and the reason why I posed this question is because I see a lot of companies, you know, ditching their UWP apps or removing UWP apps from the Microsoft Store. So it makes me question, like, is it worth publishing UWP apps in the Microsoft Store? Even Microsoft are scaling back on UWP and focusing on Win32. Now, I don't think UWP is dead because they're allowing the legacy technologies use UWP, you know, features. So, but it just begs the question, are we just going to go back to Win32 and just start developing WinForms, WPF applications? Or will they just have it to where Win32 programs will be able to run on multiple devices like the Xbox, Internet of Things, HoloLens, etc.? So, makes me kind of wonder, but I'm not going to neglect the platform. I'm committed. I'm making pretty decent money in the Microsoft Store. I have a few apps that are doing well, but what I'm doing is I'm going to decouple my logic so I can, you know, build, you know, a WPF version or a WinForms version. Also a mobile version, because a lot of my desktop apps, I'm going to make a mobile version. I'm going to convert them to mobile apps as well. And so that way users can, if they're doing something on the desktop, they can also continue the task on mobile and vice versa. And I think that's where we're heading in the world. I think, you know, a lot of users are just using multiple devices. You know, I hear a lot of people saying PCs are dead, and, you know, no one's using laptops, but that's not true. A lot of people are still buying laptops. A lot of enterprises are still using Windows because, you know, buying a Mac is pretty expensive for an organization, so they usually run Windows. And a lot of organizations are upgrading their PCs to Windows 10 because Windows 7 will no longer be supported. So that's actually good for developers because now enterprises will look for software to run on those Windows 10 devices, and we could build UWP or WPF WinForms applications for these enterprises. And I think that's where Microsoft is pretty much, I don't think they're going to kill off UWP, but I think they're just allowing like Win32 apps just to be distributed through the store, and the developer can choose whichever platform. I just think they're ditching the whole UWP name, but I think they'll still keep it as a framework instead of just pushing the agenda. Say, hey, all developers focus on UWP only, which I think is smart. I think developers should have options on what they want to use. So, and you got to think, there's almost 1 billion devices running Windows 10. It's kind of naive to just say, hey, I'm not going to distribute any apps through the Microsoft Store, right? You know, a lot of people are looking for apps and they see the Microsoft Store. Now, I do think they need to make improvements, but I mean, there's still some good apps out there. And if we really, you know, take the time and build good quality software, that's where the Microsoft Store will get better. So I think the developers have to start caring more and releasing more apps in the Microsoft Store, good apps. And I think the Microsoft Store will be just fine. So we have to meet them halfway. They have to meet us halfway. So that's my thought on UWP. Because I read an article about Gears of War 5, which is coming out September 15th. I don't remember the date, but I know it's in September. And Gears of War, they use the UWP technology, and they're no longer using that, and they're supporting Win32. And also Gears 5 will be downloaded. Users will be able to download Gears 5 in the Steam store. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So, but developers, I think you should at least try to publish an app in the Microsoft Store. Don't neglect the platform. I know we have the Play Store and the App Store, Google and Apple. Everything is mobile, but you know, a lot of people are using different devices. A lot of people are still using PCs to do heavyweight like work. So I don't think it's wise to just say desktops are dead. There's still an open market. Even on the Mac, there's still an open market. So I just think we need to architect our applications to run on multiple devices. So I want to talk about something that I've been thinking about all week. You know, when I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, a lot of people label themselves as a developer, which rightfully so. You are a developer. You write code in a language framework, you're a developer. But if you look on a lot of people's profile, they'll say, I'm a React developer, I'm an Angular developer, I'm a Python developer, I'm a Java developer, C# developer, C++ developer, and the list goes on and on and on. And I used to say, I'm a Java developer. When I was in the enterprise world, when I did contract work, I did a lot of Java development. So I was labeled as a Java developer. But now, running my own company, I don't really look at myself as just a Java developer. I look at myself more as an entrepreneur, but as a developer, I look at myself as just a problem solver, because I'm able to use C++, C#, Java, Python. I'm capable of using these languages. And the language is a tool to solve a problem. So let's say if I'm a Java developer, but I need to build an application, and Python is better suited to solve this problem, and it's more efficient and I can get it done faster, then I will use Python. But do I say now I'm a Python developer? So I think if you're a developer, you should just say you're a problem solver, because that's what developers do. They solve problems. When you write an application, You develop software for consumers or enterprises, you're solving a problem. It doesn't really matter what technology you're using. The consumer doesn't really care about the technology being used to build the application. They just care, hey, does it solve the problem? Does it work? I don't care. They don't care how it's made. At least a lot of consumers don't. So I think we should get away from labeling ourselves as a developer, as a Java developer or a JavaScript developer. I think we're just developers. But I like to say we're problem solvers, because that's what we do. And I feel like when you say you're a Java developer, you're putting yourself in a box. So then people will only look at you as, oh, he or she only knows Java. And I don't think you want to do that. Now, I do believe a lot of people do it because that's their favorite programming language or favorite framework. So they'll say, hey, I am a React or Angular developer or Ember developer, because that's, they only want to use those frameworks, those technologies. But let's say you get on a job and you're forced to learn a new technology. You're forced to get out of your comfort zone. Will you still have the love of creating software because you're not able to use your favorite framework or favorite language to solve the problem? That's where the true test comes in. See, I have no problem with any of these frameworks or programming languages. I actually embrace them all. In fact, I actually get irritated when I hear developers go back and forth. This language is better than that language. This framework is better than that framework. There's no perfect framework or language. There's pros and cons to every language. In fact, I see a lot of people say a lot of bad things about Java. It was so verbose, and I get it. But Java has matured over the years. They may have been late, but they've matured and they've become a little more modern over the years. But Java is really good in the enterprise. Java is open source. There's a lot of frameworks like Spring, Hibernate, Struts. You have the Play framework. You have a lot of open source. There's a big open source community. That's why a lot of enterprises use Java, and it's scalable, and you can run it on any machine. With the JVM, you can run it on a Mac, you can run it on Windows. So it depends what kind of application that you're building. So if you're building an enterprise app, Java's not a bad choice. But also now you have the more modern frameworks that people like to use. People like to use the mean stack. And the mean stack is Mongo, Express, Angular, and Node. And Express is basically a library used in Node. A lot of people are using Node.js. So there's just, technology evolves over time. So as a problem solver, because that's what I refer to myself as a problem solver. I mean, I say I'm a software engineer, software developer, but I'm getting out of the phase of saying I'm just a web developer, unless I only specifically want to do web. But I just like to build applications that solve problems. I don't care if it's a mobile app, web, desktop, game, mixed reality. So we got to get out of that. I think we're just problem solvers. So even on my profile on my Twitter, I say I'm a UWP/Android developer, and I probably should put /web developer, /desktop developers, /game developer. That's just too long of a title. Now, here's the thing. When you're a software developer, it's a tough job because things are changing all the time. So if you get stuck in one language or one framework, you might get left behind because like I said, a company may come around and say, hey, we are not using Angular anymore. We're going to start using React, or we're going to start using Ember. And some people can learn it very quick and it's fine, but some people are like, whoa, this is totally out of my comfort zone. I don't know if I want to do this, because all I like to do is build apps with Angular. Build front end apps with Angular. I don't want to use Ember. I don't want to use React. I don't want to use Vue. I just want to stick with Angular. So then you have to question, are you a software developer? Or are you just a person who just likes to use one framework? So, because over the years, what I've learned, it doesn't really matter. I've had to learn things quickly on the job, even on my own. Like, I discovered, oh, this technology is better suited, so I need to learn this. You know, as a software developer, you're always learning. It never stops. That's why I believe you should never put yourself in a box and label yourself as a developer, because it's evolving all the time. Just think about the people that said they were COBOL developers. A lot of those developers probably just stopped because they're like, you know what, this is just too much. It's changing too much. I just like to do COBOL. I'll do something else. And then you have the other half is like, you know what, COBOL is not popular in the enterprise. Okay, I'll learn Java. This is going to solve a problem. I love solving problems, and I love solving problems through creating software. So you should always learn. Like, never stop learning. I read in the Pragmatic Programmer book, they recommend that you learn a new technology, I think, every year. So every year they recommend you should learn a new language, new framework. Well, times have changed. Things are a little bit more accelerated now with the internet. Back in like 20 years ago, I don't even think Google was really around yet, or it was just starting out. You had to read books, you had to order books, and you just had to like really like study and just go through it. Now you have so many resources online. You can access different like IDEs or code editors. You can just download a lot of languages and just get started. You have so many tutorials online. You have YouTube. You have a lot of online courses. So you can learn things fairly quickly now. So, which can be overwhelming for many, but I don't mind it. I love learning. It takes up most, like, what I do takes up most of my time. Like, I'd rather learn a new technology than, doing something else, because it's going to help me in my career developing software. It's changed a lot. I've only been writing code for it's be 10 years, right? Well, I was introduced 10 years, but I really started in 2010. Yeah, so about 9 years. So a lot has changed. When I was learning Java. I learned some C++, and I learned C#. And a lot of people hated JavaScript. Now everyone loves JavaScript. JavaScript has changed a lot over the years. There's a lot of frameworks. Now with JavaScript, there's like a new framework created every minute. But there's a lot of different frameworks. JavaScript has matured a lot. I learned PHP. You have PHP 7, and PHP has matured a lot. So, and you have Python. Python was not the number one language, and I think still is Java. I think it goes, back and forth between Java and C. But now you got JavaScript that's becoming really popular and the de facto language. And at the time, they were not really advocating for people to learn how to code until like maybe a couple years, maybe 2012. And now JavaScript is the language that they introduce people to, or Python, to get into programming. When I was in college, it was either C++ or Java, the more object-oriented languages. And now you have JavaScript, which is a functional language. And, Python, which is a interpreted language. It's not compiled. So we're moving more towards functional programming, which is really interesting. Which, again, let's say if I just stay stuck in my ways, I get left behind. So I took the time to learn Angular, and I read a lot of documentation. I look at React, and I look at Ember. I read about the different technologies so I can have a high-level overview. So when I come across a problem, I can say, okay, I can use React for this. Oh, I can use Ionic. Oh, I can use Ionic and build a progressive web app, or I can use Angular to build a progressive web app. I mean, it really doesn't matter with the progressive web apps. It's all about the manifest file, right? So you have to always read blog posts. There's a lot of good articles on Medium. There's a lot of app developer sites out there. I'm old school, so I still like to read books. Pragmatic Programmer is going to release the 20th anniversary, and I am going to buy it, and I'm going to read it. It's one of my favorite books on software development. It's really helped me a lot. So, yeah. So, again, try not to get in the habit of just labeling yourself. You're just a developer. You're just a problem solver. I'd rather be a problem solver who just happens to be a developer. So, that's it for this episode. You can follow me on Twitter at Appavelli, Appaveli. You can also follow me on Twitter at Appavelli. So Instagram and Twitter at Appavelli. And yeah, you can go to appavelli.com. Please subscribe and rate the app. Give feedback. I want to hear topics you might want to hear. I want to have open discussions with everyone. This is a learning experience for all of us. And that's why I'm doing this podcast, is giving my perspective. I want to hear your feedback, and I want to discuss it on the podcast. And hopefully I can get some guests on here. I have to really reach out to some developers and say, hey, you want to get on the podcast? And, I know everyone's schedules are a little different in the time zones, but I'm going to try to get some really good developers on here to talk about their experience and their approach to developing software. You can also visit pragmaticdevsolutions.com if you want to see my apps. And that's it. So stay focused, stay wired in, be productive, and I am out.